What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pulse Metrics, and today we have an interesting video. Today we are going to start all of the fantasy football advice. So today we are going to be doing wide receiver rankings. Now, I'm a little new to this, so if I bored you guys at all, bear with me. But quick disclaimer as usual, please make sure to leave in the comments what you agree with, what you disagree with, anything, who you think should be higher on my rankings. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so we have our tier list here, and we got rankings 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and 30 to 36. So, starting off with number 1, in my eyes, the number 1 wide receiver for fantasy football, it is Tyreek Hill. Had 13 touchdowns last year, over 1,700 yards. ESPN Fantasy Football has him at number 2. In my opinion, he's no doubtably the best wide receiver in entire fantasy because he's probably the fastest wide receiver and he can catch the best. The thing about it, Jalen Waddle, he has been getting injured a lot. He missed most of the season last year, so that was a big part for him getting most of the targets. Tua, however, also had over 4,600 yards. That was the most in the league. He was by far the most accurate quarterback I've seen. Obviously, got off to a strong start, passing for 4 touchdowns in his first game. Scored 70 against the Broncos. Um, with Jalen Waddle having these injuries and them having no tight end, it only really helps Tyreek Hill because he will get more and more and more and more targets, which is a huge help for him, as well as, you know, the defense just not being able to cover him all that much. Obviously, he had 13 touchdowns. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but he had 13 touchdowns, over 1,700 yards. Um, mm, yeah. Tyreek Hill, obviously, he's been good for a long time. His aging is really starting to, get bad. I mean, he's almost like in his mid 30s. So you do got to wonder, is that going to take, beginning to chip away on his skill level? I mean, right now, I don't think it is. I could be wrong, but for you fantasy users, I would take Tyreek Hill in like the definitely in the first round if you're looking for a wide receiver or a running back. Next up, at number 2, honestly, I have AJ Brown. What fantasy wise, definitely AJ Brown. If he hadn't been getting hurt a lot last year he's been dealing with a lot of injuries, and he still had 7 touchdowns, over 1,400 yards. Um, you know, 7 touchdowns, 1,400 over 1,400 yards. Did take a little bit fall back from his last year, averaging 11 touchdowns and almost 1,500 yards. Overall, the Eagles just had a really, really down year. Um, you do gotta wonder, will the addition of Saquon be a problem for AJ Brown? They might want to run the ball a lot more. Uh, I don't think that will. AJ Brown, again, like Tyreek Hill, he is not necessarily as fast, but he's just strong. He will blow right through the defense anytime and any place. And there's no doubt about that. I mean, he does share the targets a lot with Devontae Smith, so that could play a key factor. But overall, if you want him to get you yards, he will, and he's definitely the number 1 wide receiver for the Eagles right now. Next up, the third ranked wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb. ESPN has him at number 1. which honestly is not really surprising. He had the most amount of receptions, second most amount of yards, and second most amount of touchdowns with 12. CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion, he is a really, really, really good wide receiver. He obviously had that 92-yarder last year against the Lions. That was super fun to watch. Dak also had a good year, passing for 36 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions. Yeah, the Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb duo was super dominant last year. It could be dominant again. He obviously scored the most points, so that's why he's, according to fantasy, he's the number one. But this is going into next year, and I do not think, with the subtraction of Tyron Smith, that offensive line's really going to be hurting. So I'm not sure if Dak's going to have enough time nowadays to throw the ball eventually to CeeDee Lamb. But we'll have to see how it goes. The Dallas Cowboys have overall done nothing in free agency, so you really gotta wonder, will they be as strong as they were last year? I don't think they will. But moving on to number 4. Honestly, I have Justin Jefferson. That injury taking a huge step back from where he was yesterday, and not yesterday, last year. And on top of it all, he has a rookie quarterback. So he doesn't have anyone necessarily good throwing in the ball. In my opinion, J.J. McCarthy is really up in the air. He could either be good and he can either be terrible. But in those only 10 games that he played, he still put up 1,000 yards. And that to me is insane. Because Justin Jefferson, he's been good ever since he's been a rookie. The key to his success a lot has kind of been a good quarterback. He's had Kirk Cousins a lot. And when he was healthy, over 1,800 yards, only 8 touchdowns in his 2022 Offensive Player of the Year award year. It's just, I'm not really sure if he's going to be as good as he was in the previous years because, he has a rookie quarterback. And he's starting to really share the targets with Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison, by the way, had over 10 touchdowns last year, but when they had Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs was consistent, but he wasn't really as consistent towards the end of the season. So that's why the Vikings didn't really do as well. But, J.J. McCarthy, we'll have to see if he's good in order for Justin Jefferson to have any success. All right, next up, number 5. I have Ja'Marr Chase. Right here. It really depends on if Joe Burrow is healthy, because if he is, Ja'Marr Chase will get at least 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. T. Higgins really doesn't want to be there. They franchise tagged him. If they had let him go, then Ja'Marr Chase would have gotten more targets. On top of it all, Zach Moss, they don't have a really good running back, so they're going to want to pass the ball a lot. And adding to that offensive line with Amarius Mims, that's going to give Joe Burrow a lot more time to pass the ball, hopefully to Ja'Marr Chase, because Ja'Marr Chase is a former Offensive Rookie of the Year, and, he's been really, really, really consistent the past couple years, and I don't think this year is going to be any different. All right, next up at number 6, the 6th ranked wide receiver, we have honestly Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions. The Lions overall had a really strong year last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown had over 1,400 yards. 10 touchdowns, I think it was. Yeah, it was 10 touchdowns. ESPN, I think, has him. Let's see. ESPN has him at number 4. Deservingly so, because, Amon-Ra St. Brown, another one of those guys that's just, super fast and could really score you a touchdown anytime, any place. Jameson Williams, they did pick him up. So he's part of a really big wide receiver duo. However, Sam Laporta, he does get a lot of touchdowns, so he kind of takes away from what Amon-Ra St. Brown could be doing. But, I mean, I don't think that's going to be the case because Amon-Ra St. Brown's the clear number one wide receiver. Jameson Williams is getting old. He's not going to be able to do what he's been doing the past couple seasons. But as always, we'll have to see. Next up, number 7. Call me crazy, but I have Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua obviously broke the rookie receiving record. However, had only 6 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp was very, very injury risked. So he wasn't really available all that much because he was injured for most of the season. Puka Nacua, out of nowhere, he stepped up and he got most of the targets from Matthew Stafford. Plus, they don't really have that good of a tight end, so that also really helps too. However, their running game too, it has been really good. So you kind of wonder, are they going to pass the ball most of the time, or are they going to run the ball most of the time? Honestly, I think it's going to be pretty split. Kyren Williams, obviously, also high up there in the fantasy rankings. Puka Nacua, ESPN had him at number 7 as well. So I agree with ESPN. Just Puka Nacua was a different animal last year, and I cannot wait to watch him play this year. All right, next up at number 8, I think it's gonna be Garrett Wilson. This guy won the Offensive Rookie of the Year even without Aaron Rodgers. So just imagine what he could do with Aaron Rodgers. That is if he does stay healthy. Because Garrett Wilson, when he is healthy himself, he is a number 1 wide receiver for sure. Had like 8 touchdowns. I think it was 5 touchdowns last year. Obviously he didn't get he wasn't as consistent. He had over 1,000 yards, but he wasn't as consistent because the quarterback situation for the Jets last year was insanely bad, and he didn't really have a good guy to throw to him the past couple years. But like I said, with Zach Wilson, he won the Offensive Rookie of the Year. So if Aaron Rodgers has a good season and he does too, they could win. I mean, he could win the Offensive Player of the Year award. I'm just saying, because Garrett Wilson, he's an animal, and again, if you want him to get you yards, he will do it. He'll make a one-handed catch out of nowhere in the end zone, and I've seen him do it. Next up, at number 9, oof, this is gonna be a little tough. I think I have Davante Adams going at number 9. Big fall off from last year because, I mean, who's their quarterback? Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew? However, Gardner Minshew did not do bad last year. 15 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. I think he had over 1,000 yards with the Colts because he had a few good receivers there. He had Michael Pittman. I mean, it's just not enough. The Raiders' situation overall this year has been really, really bad. All I know is that they will pass the ball a lot because they signed Alexander Mattison, and he did absolutely terrible last year. No touchdowns, only 800 yards. I think it was 600. 600 to 800 yards. All I know is that he didn't break 1,000. So you really got to wonder, are they going to pass the ball a lot more? I think they will. Davante Adams is basically their only receiver. Jacoby Myers didn't do much last year. You just got to have someone good throwing you the ball. I think Michael Penix would have been a good pick, but the Falcons unexpectedly took him. So that's not good. That's not a good move by Atlanta. But Davante Adams, the reason I think he's still inside the top 10 is because he's going to get all the targets now. But moving on to number 10. Now we have Mike Evans. This guy was an animal last year. 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. That was tied for the most with Tyreek Hill. Baker Mayfield obviously had a really good year last year. 24 touchdowns, I think, to 11 picks. Yeah, I think it was 11 picks. Obviously, making it to the playoffs, to lose to the Lions. Mike Evans, he's aging a lot. But they had two 1,000-yard receivers last year with Chris Godwin and, you know, Mike Evans. Uh, Cade Otton as well. He's going to be in the mix. But I think that Mike Evans, based on what he did last year, they're going to want to give him the ball. Rachaad White hasn't really proven himself yet to be a decent enough running back, so they're going to want to pass the ball a lot more. Baker Mayfield, obviously they re-signed him. They gave him a good year. Mike Evans, he's there for only 2 more years. We'll have to see if he signs somewhere else. But, Mike Evans, number 10, definitely top 10 wide receiver after last year. All right, moving on to number 11. Hey, I have Michael Pittman. I have Michael Pittman being at number 10 because, number 11. Because, Anthony Richardson, he's back. He's going to, hopefully he will be healthy next year. So that's going to definitely play a deciding factor. And if he is healthy, Michael Pittman could really get a lot of the targets because he's really the only wide receiver on that team. You know, they're going to share the targets a lot they're going to share the ball a lot with Jonathan Taylor. Hopefully he does stay healthy. But for Michael Pittman's sake, if Jonathan Taylor is healthy, then he's not going to be, he's not going to get most of the attention. But he will get most of the attention on the wide receiver side since, he's their number one wide receiver. And he's fast, too. So it really comes down to if Anthony Richardson is able to stay healthy or not. And if he does, Michael Pittman could end up being a top 10 wide receiver after next year. But moving on now, at number 12, I think it's gonna be Drake London. He finally now has a quarterback that can get him the ball. Kirk Cousins. But if he does play like an injury 36-year-old quarterback, then he could fall off. But, based on what he was doing last year, 18 touchdowns in the first 5 games. Had he had gone further, then he would have won MVP, in my opinion. Hopefully he can carry that to the Falcons. And Drake London has not passed 1,000 yards yet. But now with a good quarterback, he could by week 10, in my opinion. He could share the ball a lot with Kyle Pitts. That could be a problem. And Bijan Robinson can catch too, so will they give him the ball a lot? I'm not sure. And they have a new coach, so they finally got Arthur Smith out of there. And they can finally use Drake London, right? Raheem Morris, we'll have to see what he does. But if he does well, Drake London could very well pass 1,000 yards, in my opinion. Next up, at number 13. Hey, call me crazy. I'm going with Stephon Diggs at number 13. Stephon Diggs, he's really not that good anymore. He had only 8 touchdowns last year. Stephon Diggs, he is a hell of a player without his ego. But, the Texans already have 2 good wide receivers. So they're going to be sharing the ball a lot with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and they have Dalton Schultz. And they're going to be running the ball a lot with Joe Mixon. So he's not going to be the clear number 1 guy. So he's not in the top 10 anymore because he's just not a top 10 fantasy wide receiver anymore. Especially now that he's gone to a team with more receivers than just him, like how he was with the Bills. But moving on, at number 13. This one's going to be a little controversial, but I have Chris Olave. Obviously he had a down year last year because Derek Carr, he was getting hurt a lot. So, I mean, if they end up not doing all that stuff, Wildcats with Taysom Hill, then he should be good enough to get all the targets because they got rid of Michael Thomas, so he's really their number one wide receiver. That is if Derek Carr stays healthy. Because if he does, he is definitely could be a top 10 wide receiver and break like 1,500 yards. I think he already did break 1,000 yards last season, and had 8 touchdowns, I believe. Yeah, 8 touchdowns. Fantasy football, ESPN had him ranked. Let's go down to wide receivers here. Fantasy football has him ranked at number 10. So they already have him ranked as a top 10 wide receiver, in my opinion. But in my opinion, there just are some guys that are better than him right now. He's not quite a top 10, but if Derek Carr stays healthy, then he definitely will be. Next up, at number 15 now, I have Nico Collins. Again, he could be higher, but he's going to be sharing the ball a lot. None of the Texans wide receivers are really going to be that high since, they're sharing the ball a lot with other guys. Like Nico Collins, I mean, they also have Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, so they're not going to be, as consistent. He's not going to be as consistent as he was last year since they didn't have Stephon Diggs at the time, one. And two, Tank Dell got hurt. So he really had to step it up, and he was their number one wide receiver going into the playoffs. So that really plays a key factor. If everyone else doesn't stay healthy and he does, he could break like 1,500 yards in my opinion. And he also has a good quarterback with C.J. Stroud, and they have a decent offensive line to give Stroud a lot of time to throw the ball. And the Texans overall have had a immaculate offseason, building that team to where everyone could get an opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Next up, now at number 16, I have Brandon Ayuk. This guy had over 1,000 yards, and I think 7 touchdowns. Again, sharing the ball a lot with Deebo Samuel. He's not gonna be as strong. Now that he's sharing the ball a lot with Deebo Samuel, 1, 2. You also got George Kittle. They got George Kittle getting a lot of receptions, so it really takes away the points that Brandon Ayuk could have. Just overall, all of the guys that share the ball a lot, such as Stephon Diggs, the Texans wide receivers, Brandon Ayuk, like all of those guys, they're not going to be ranked as high as the guys that could be their clear number one receiver, like CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase or Garrett Wilson. Maybe even Devontae Adams. Like, those guys are going to be ranked higher because these guys are sharing the ball, so their points go down. And Brandon Ayuk also shares the ball a lot with Christian McCaffrey. He gets a lot of carries, and he had 7 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns as well. So, really plays a key factor on Brandon Ayuk's success. He doesn't get as many targets as some of these other guys do on the 49ers. Next up, at number 17. I think I have Cooper Kupp now. Injury, no injury, he's still a top 20. He's still a top 20 guy. Puka Nacua, they're after what he did last year, they're going to give him more targets than Cooper Kupp because Cooper Kupp is starting to get old. He is getting injured a lot more. That ankle, the ACL, everything. He is getting injured a lot more, so he's not playing as many games, therefore he's not getting you as many points. So, for those of you guys, I would not take him in the first round. because there are so many other wide receivers that you could get. Fantasy has him pretty. Fantasy has him pretty low. Uh, Fantasy has him. Ooh, Fantasy has him all the way down in 23, which I agree with because Cooper Kupp, he's like Mike Trout. He cannot stay. He's consistent, but he cannot stay healthy, and yeah, that plays a key factor in his success. So for those reasons, he's not really as high as he could be. Uh, but moving on. Next up, I have Devonte Smith. This guy last year also had 7 touchdowns, not as many yards as AJ Brown, but there are two types of wide receiver duos. You have the one duo that both wide receivers have low stats because they're sharing the ball so much. Or you have the wide receiver duos who do share the ball, but both still have high stats. I think the Eagles last year did a great job in, sharing the ball a lot between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Obviously, A.J. Brown is going to get most of the targets, but as an Eagles fan, I really think that's not good because they want to force the ball to A.J. Brown a lot. Last year, we had a lot of games that costed us because of that reason, because we were trying to force the ball to A.J. Brown, make a risky throw, and it ended up getting picked off. Take the Seahawks game for an example. But, Devontae Smith really stepped it up in the playoffs with the Buccaneers game. We had a very bad game. He was the only reason we had any kind of life in that game. But I think he will be super high again because we not only are we sharing the ball and doing it well, but we're getting him a lot of targets as well. Like I said, with the two types of wide receivers, wide receiver duos, we have the good type of wide receiver duo because we share the ball and both wide receivers have high stats. And if we keep that up, he's definitely a top 20 wide receiver for fantasy. All right, next up, at number 19. A lot of guys would argue that he should be higher, but shouldn't at the same time. At number 19, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. He is the clear number one receiver on the board right now for the Cardinals. I mean, who else do they have? They lost Marquise Hollywood Brown. Now they have Greg Dortch as their number 2. That's not good. However, Trey McBride had an insane season. In just like 10 weeks, he had 1,000 yards. That really could play a key factor in Marvin Harrison's success. I know I've said that a lot, but it's, what I say a lot. Marvin Harrison's success right now is really up in the air because he's a rookie wide receiver. He could be good. He could be terrible. That's why I don't really have a lot of rookie wide receivers on this list. But the reason I have Marvin Harrison inside the top 20 is because, who else do they have? They have no one else. And he's going to get most of the targets. And he's going to get you a lot of points. Moving on to number 20. I think it's going to be DJ Moore. Mainly because, he had 1,000 yards even with a bad quarterback. Now, you also have a rookie quarterback with Caleb Williams. So you do have to wonder, is he gonna be as good? And he's sharing the ball a lot with 2 other receivers, Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. So you got those 2 factors: rookie quarterback and sharing the ball a lot. So he's definitely 20. Him and Keenan Allen aren't really as high on this list because, Keenan Allen for same reasons. And another reason, he's almost ready to retire. He's getting old. So, you do have to wonder, is that going to affect him? I think it will. So that's why I have him all the way at 20. Um, but moving on to 21. This one was really hard to predict. But we're moving on to the next tier. I had I have George Pickens. I mean, the quarterback situation. On one hand, you have Russell Wilson, who's really not good anymore. He's very mid. And on the other hand, you have Justin Fields, who's more of a runner than a passer. And you also have Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. He is terrible. A terrible coach, offensive coordinator, everything. So, I mean, with that guy calling plays, he could be giving the ball a lot to Van Jefferson. He could be spreading around, even though they lost Deontay Johnson, and George Pickens is clearly their number one receiver. But, you have to wonder, is Arthur Smith going to be a bum, or is he going to keep proving his good track record as an offensive coordinator? I don't think he will. Also, they're sharing the ball a lot. They're running the ball a lot with Najee Harris. He's a key factor for the Steelers right now. So, and like I said, you have the quarterback situation. It's just not really looking good for George Pickens right now. Next up, at number 22, I have Tank Dell. I think fantasy has him pretty low. I don't know why. I think, fantasy has him at 30. That is outrageous. I mean, same reasons as Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. Sharing the ball a lot. They also have a good running back. But, if it wasn't for injuries, he could have been a top 10 wide receiver. Again, if it wasn't for injuries. We'll have to see, though. That injury is really going to affect him this year. So we'll have to see, though, if he can stay healthy. Because if he can stay healthy, then he is definitely, and I mean definitely, could end up being the number one receiver for the Houston Texans. But moving on to number 23, you got DK Metcalf. I mean, dude, Geno Smith, he's really starting to fall down a little bit, and he's not young. DK Metcalf's not young. And plus, you have a good running back with Kenneth Walker. They're going to be running the ball a lot. Just overall had a down year last year. So did Geno Smith. Overall, the Seahawks were not really that good. And DK Metcalf is going to share the ball a lot with Tyler Lockett. And you also have a good up-and-coming guy who could take the number one receiver spot. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba. So, it's like the Texans. You got three guys that are just, are going to be sharing the ball a lot, sharing the targets. Geno Smith, he's not young. He sat by Russell Wilson all of those years. So, he's very rusty right now. And he's very, he's been mid this season. I think this is the season where he starts to regress. So, if he does retire, hopefully the Seahawks will draft a new quarterback. But if they do that, the rookie quarterback situation, it's not going to look good for DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett or all of those guys. Next up. At number 21, 22, 20. Yeah, number 24, I got Keenan Allen. Listen, same reason for DJ Moore. Sharing the targets. You got a good running game now. You got a good rookie quarterback. He's aging. He's starting to regress a lot. He did get hurt. He did get hurt a lot last season. He was playing with injuries. All of those factors are going to play in for Keenan Allen. So you do have to wonder, is he going to be as good as he's been in recent memory? I don't think he will. So that's why I have him at number 24. All right, moving on to number 25 now. I have Zay Flowers from the Baltimore Ravens. I think they also I think they also have this guy pretty low. They have him on ESPN Fantasy. Let's see. Um, Trying to find. Ooh, they have him at 24. I mean, for my reasoning, I have him at 25, so not really far off. For my reasoning for him to be a little low, I mean, honestly, as a second year guy, this is pretty high because like Rashad Bateman, no. Mark Andrews is definitely a injury guy now. He's not young. Um, I mean, he was Travis Kelce. He was basically like the Travis Kelce Patrick Mahomes thing that was going on before he got hurt. So Isaiah Likely really stepped it up. You know, Zay Flowers, uh, he was just he had a really good year last year. At least a good year for a rookie. You know, obviously Lamar Jackson won the MVP. He did way, in my opinion, way better than anyone expected him to do because, you know, Lamar Jackson, for as much as he runs, he is a really, really, really decent passer. Um, the reason for me, however, that he's this low is now that Mark Andrews is back. You know, Mark Andrews could be their number one receiver right now. And so Zay Flowers could not be getting as many targets as he did last year when Mark Andrews was hurt. And now they're going to be running the ball a lot since they have Derrick Henry now. However, it could go this way, though. They do run the ball a lot, and when no one expects them to pass, they do pass, and either Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers will be opened. And so that's how they will get a lot of touchdowns. Overall, the Ravens are going to be super dangerous this year. Zay Flowers, they do have a top 30 wide receiver, though, in Zay Flowers. Next up, at number 26, I have Amari Cooper. I mean, I know this guy was a dog last year, but, I mean, that was with Joe Flacco. I mean, now you have Deshaun Watson. In my opinion, he's never going to be a top 10 quarterback again because he's aging and he's starting to regress. And plus, you know, the guy is just a goon, and he's really not that good. I mean, he didn't do horrible. It's just that he got injured. And they're like the Jets. Their quarterback situation was really, really, really bad last year. So, he wasn't able to do as well as he could have been. Because, also, Amari Cooper is also aging, and he could, just fall off. With Deshaun Watson definitely throwing in the ball. Like I said, he's regressing. And Nick Chubb, definitely a top 5 running back. Nick Chubb is going to get a lot of carries now that he's back. He's probably not going to be as good as he was, but if he stays healthy, he could definitely get a lot of carries. So the Browns could be running the ball a lot. So Amari Cooper could not really get as much attention as he should. All right, next up, I was just looking at where Amari Cooper was, and Amari Cooper is at 34. So yeah, they don't have him ranked super high. Respectfully, yeah, that's a good reason. So we have 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. At number 27 now, I think I have Deebo Samuel. You know, again, sharing the targets a lot. He only had 800 receiving yards. So that is definitely not good. Besides, they use him as a running back way more than a wide receiver. So, he could rush and receive at the same time. But, Brandon Ayuk's and George Kittle are going to get all the targets. And Deebo Samuel hasn't really done much these last couple years. So, he's really going to start to regress since he's not getting as many targets. And he's just being used as a running back way more than he actually should with those jet sweeps. But moving on now to number 28. I think, honestly, I think I have Malik Neighbors from the New York Giants. Again, like, a rookie wide receiver is not going to be put as high. However, he is really the only receiver on the Giants now. I mean, Darius Slayton's no longer going to be their number one wide receiver. And on top of it all, they have a very bad quarterback with Daniel Jones. So he is not going to be as good as he could be if he did have a decent quarterback. Maybe even if he, let's be honest, if he had Joe Burrow, then he would put up 1,000 yards, or he could win the offensive rookie of the year because he's gonna get all the targets. They're not gonna be running the ball as much, if since they have Devin Singletary, but he's not as high because they have Daniel Jones. It's like Deshaun Watson. They don't have someone good throwing in the football, so they're not gonna have as good of a season as they could. But next up now, at number 29, yeah, I think we're at 29. I have Jalen Waddle. Again, you have a good quarterback. Hopefully you can stay healthy. I mean, he's not going to get all the targets because they have Tyreek Hill. However, he's their number two wide receiver, and they don't have a good tight end. So if Tyreek Hill's not there, if Tyreek Hill's hurt, then Jalen Waddle could be the next best thing. But I don't think that Tyreek Hill is going to get hurt because he doesn't get injured as much as Jalen Waddle does. So if Jalen Waddle has like one of those seasons where his ankle's giving him problems, then he probably is not going to break 1,000 yards. But if he does stay healthy, then it's going to be like the A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith duo. You're going to have two guys who are sharing the ball, but also have really good stats. And like I said about Tua, he's a very accurate quarterback and could throw for like 4 touchdowns and 4,000 yards in a game if he really wanted to. All right, now at number 30, this is going to piss a lot of people off, but we have Keon Coleman from the Buffalo Bills. Out of all the people, they brought in that guy. Hey, I'm not arguing with it. Because he's clearly going to be their number one wide receiver. I mean, Khalil Shakir, he's got potential, but this guy he's catching, his ability with catching is unbelievable. Yeah, and he's got a good quarterback. He's going to be the number one receiver, and he's got a good quarterback. He's a rookie, so that's why he's not really as high, but he's being set up for success. My only concern is that, Dalton Kincaid is lingering around right there, but I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. Overall, Keon Coleman is definitely a top 30. At least he should be, with a decent quarterback and him being the number one wide receiver. All right, now moving on to number 31. I think I have scary Terry McLaurin. Rookie quarterback, that could play into his success. And definitely he had a really, really down year last year since they had Sam Howell as their quarterback. 21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. That's not good at all. And, I mean, he's clearly their number one wide receiver since they don't have as many good guys as they should. And they brought in a old tight end in Zach Ertz. I mean, I love you, Zach, but, you're starting to regress a lot. So, he really could get all the targets. If he's good enough, he is going to get all of the targets. And he's like a super fast receiver. He can get really wide open if he really wanted to. And they're going to be running the ball a lot, so some teams wouldn't really expect him to throw the ball as much since they have Austin Eckler. So that will leave Terry McLaurin wide open in order to score touchdowns, in order to get points. So that is definitely going to help him out a lot. All right, moving on, we have two We have two Chiefs receivers. We have Rashee Rice at number 32, and then Marquise Hollywood Brown at number 33. Um, Obviously, two guys who, in my opinion, are going to be the top two best receivers for the Chiefs. However, that is if Xavier Worthy is good. However, the reason that they're so low is because like you have the best tight end in the league, Travis Kelce. He gets like at least like 100 targets a season because Patrick Mahomes, he throws him the ball a lot, and their running game is gonna be good, hopefully, because they're gonna run the ball a lot with Isaiah Pacheco. So like you do gotta wonder, is that gonna help them or hurt them? In my opinion, it's gonna hurt them a lot because Rashee Rice. Before that, like he couldn't really catch all that well, and Hollywood Brown it has been getting injured a lot. He's super fast, but he's also like very injury prone. So it's just really up in the air who's gonna be better between these two. Based on my rankings, I think it's gonna be Rashee Rice. Fantasy, according to fantasy, let's see. I mean, these two are pretty low. Marquise Brown is at 48, or should I say Hollywood Brown, and then Rashee Rice is at 27. I don't think Marquise Brown should be that low, since he was the number one wide receiver a lot for the Cardinals, so obviously he had to carry some of that to the Chiefs. But it really depends on if he does stay healthy. If he does, the Chiefs could really be successful. Next up, moving on. So we have 33. We have two Titans wide receivers. We have DeAndre Hopkins. We have Calvin Lee. DeAndre Hopkins, he's really starting to age. He's starting to regress. Do as well as anticipated him to be, since Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he's just not really. He wasn't really that good last season. 21 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. And if he couldn't really do that well with a quarterback like that, then just imagine how they're going to do with a quarterback like Will Levis. Like, Will Levis is not that good. And I said in my draft prediction that he's not that good, and they should draft another, and he should draft another quarterback, have him be the backup to get a fresh start. But it doesn't seem like that they're doing that, and I don't think Will Levis is going to be that good. I think he's going to be pretty much of a bust. So, that really plays a key factor in DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, so they're not going to be as good as they could be. And finally, moving on to number 36, I have T. Higgins. This guy, he got franchise tagged. This guy's a diva. He does not want to be there. He's probably going to miss a lot of games since he doesn't want to be there. But if he does, I mean, he could get some targets. But, Jamar Chase, he's going to get most of the targets. I mean, he does have Joey B throwing him the ball. But, if Jamar Chase gets as many targets as I think he could, then T. Higgins is not really going to score fantasy users as many points as most people, in my opinion, are anticipating him to. Alright, that is going to do it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I know that was long, but thank you guys for bearing with me. Also, guys, thank you for 400 subscribers. I know it's not much now, but it's definitely, we're working through it. We're making progress. Make sure to leave a like on this video and make sure to subscribe. Now we're on the road to 500 subscribers. I'm trying to get monetized soon, so make sure to subscribe for more content. I'll see y'all next time. Peace out and good luck on your fantasy football seasons. I mean, there's going to be more. There's going to be quarterback, tight end, and running backs coming soon. But overall, I'm going to stop yapping now. So I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.